All right, we are now streaming live on YouTube. We're about to begin the preliminary hearing for Juan Burt, charged in warrant numbers 2024 WA 77882, that's DUI, 2024 WA 77883, hit and run, 2024 WA 77884, red light violation, 2024 WA 77885, failure to maintain insurance, 2024 WA 77886, no license, 2024 WA 77887, expired tag, 2024 WA 77888, concealing ID of a motor vehicle, 2024 WA 77889, possession of THC oil, 2024 WA 77890, possession of marijuana, less than an ounce. Representing the state is Attorney Sheriff Freeman. Representing the defendant is Attorney Lewis. Your witness, Attorney Freeman.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Adams, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear and affirm that the testimony about to provide in the matter of State of Georgia versus Juan Burt will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
You can lower your hand. Please tell us your name and how you're employed.
Officer Rutherford Adams, Clayton County Police Department officer.
I'm sorry.
February of 2024 is when I started.
February of 2024?
Correct.
And prior to joining the Clayton County Police Department, did you work in any other law enforcement capacity?
I was a recruit at the Atlanta Police Department, and in 2018, I was a correction officer in Florida.
Prior to joining the Clayton County Police Department, did you have any training or courses regarding DUIs?
Yes, the Atlanta Police Department, I had their DUI training.
If you could tell us what that training involved.
The walk and turn, the the one leg raise test.
Were you working with the Clayton County Police Department on May 31st of 2024?
Yes, ma'am.
And on that particular day, did you make contact with Mr. Juan Burt?
I did.
If you could tell us what brought about you making contact with Mr. Burt.
There was a hit and run accident on Tara Boulevard and Highway 138. Mr. Juan Burt was the operator of the vehicle that was involved in the hit and run, and he was the operator of the vehicle that fled the scene.
How were you able to determine what happened regarding this accident?
There was a witness.
This incident happened, you said on Tara Boulevard?
Tara Boulevard and Highway 138 in Clayton County.
Is that the location that you went to?
Other law enforcement officers had located the vehicle using flock and fuses at North Main Street and Church Street in Clayton County.
The witness that you indicated, Officer Adams, that led you to Mr. Burt, was the witness still on the scene when you got there?
The witness was on the scene and provided me with a signed witness statement.
What did the witness state in the statement?
That the vehicle that Juan Burt was operating had ran the red light and had ran the red light, went straight into traffic and hit the other vehicle involved in the accident, and then drove into the Walmart that's located on the northwest corner as if he were going to park and wait for law enforcement for the crash accident process, but then he fled the scene.
Was the witness able to give you a description of the vehicle that Mr. Burt was driving?
I don't remember the witness statement, but he was able to give us a description of the vehicle.
The vehicle that was struck, was it still on the scene when you got there?
It was still on the scene. When I got there, the vehicle was in the middle of the road as an obstruction, and I was processing the crash accident report. I was also requesting a tow for the vehicle because it was disabled.
The driver of that vehicle, were you able to speak to him or her?
I was able to speak to him.
What information was he able to provide regarding the accident?
I don't remember specifically what he was able to provide. I believe both the witness and him were able to provide the tag, the color of the vehicle, and the make and model.
Was there anyone in that vehicle with the driver?
No.
The witness that you are speaking of, was this witness in his or her own vehicle?
I believe so.
So the witness was not a pedestrian?
No.
Yeah. After getting the information from the witness and speaking to the person in the other vehicle, tell us what you did.
While I was processing the accident report, other law enforcement officers, Sergeant Lamb and Officer Mosby, were using flock and fuses to locate the hit and run driver. And they also did supplemental reports on what they did to apprehend the driver, how they were able to distinguish that that vehicle was the vehicle involved in the accident, and that the damages matched what had happened at the accident as it was described.
Do you know where the officers located that vehicle?
They located the vehicle on North Main Street and Church Street.
Was Mr. Burke still in the vehicle?
He was still in the vehicle.
Were officers able to apprehend Mr. Burke at that time?
Yes, ma'am.
Officer Adams, did Mr. Burke make any statements regarding the accident?
He said that the other vehicle ran the red light.
Have you or other officers been able to retrieve any kind of video to show what happened regarding the accident?
There may have been video that I have not observed. I do not have access to the video footage available to.
Okay. So one of the charges of the Adams is DUI alcohol less safe. Could you tell us why you charged Mr. Burke with that?
Yes, so I observed that Juan Burke's eyes were bloodshot and glassy. He had a faint smell of marijuana that was on him. His speech was a little mushy mouth. He was not able to walk straight or stand straight for long. And his speech was a little erratic. His attitude would shift. He'd be calm one minute and then extremely talkative the next.
Did you yourself give Mr. Burke or ask him to perform these things for you?
As far as what things?
When you said he couldn't walk straight, was that something you asked him to perform?
When we brought him from one vehicle, from the vehicle that he was operating to my patrol vehicle, he couldn't walk straight. I had to hold him up and guide him.
The bloodshot and glassy eyes, are those characteristics that you learned from your training regarding DUI?
Yes, ma'am.
The slurred speech that you talked about regarding Mr. Burke, is that also a characteristic you learned regarding DUI?
Yes, ma'am.
After getting Mr. Burt to your patrol vehicle, was his vehicle searched?
His vehicle was searched.
And what, if anything, was located?
There were 2 vapes that were found with a dark liquid substance suspected of being THC oil contained within, and those were submitted into evidence.
One of the charges also, Officer Adams, was possession of marijuana, less than an ounce. If you could, what was the basis for charging Mr. Burt with that?
Once he was placed under arrest, his person was searched, and 4.9 grams of a green leafy substance suspected of being marijuana was found in his left pocket, and that was submitted into evidence.
When you state suspected marijuana, based on your training, knowledge, and experience, did that substance possess the characteristics that you know to be marijuana?
Yes, ma'am.
Did it have the same smell as you know from your training experience to be marijuana?
Yes, ma'am.
At some point in time, did you run a history regarding Mr. Burt?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you able to determine if Mr. Burt had a valid driver's license at this time?
He did not have a valid driver's license at that time.
Was Mr. Burt able to provide you with an insurance card?
He did not provide us with an insurance card.
Were you able to determine whether or not he had valid insurance at that time?
He did not have valid insurance at that time.
Did Mr. Burt have license plates on his car?
Yes, he had a license plate on the vehicle.
Were you able to determine whether or not that license plate was valid?
The plate was valid, but it didn't belong to that vehicle. Or should I say the registration was expired, but it did not belong to that vehicle. And it did not belong.
It did not belong to the vehicle that Mr. Burt was driving?
Correct.
Were you able to determine if this vehicle had been registered by Mr. Burt?
The vehicle that he was driving,
Yes.
was not. It was, let me see when it was. It was registered to his girlfriend, Beverly Klima or Klima.
But the vehicle did not have a valid registration on it?
I'm sorry, the VIN was checked on the vehicle, and that
Okay,
came back to a Gregory Paul Stell, I think his name was.
so with this vehicle, the license plate or and the, I guess, the tag on the car, did it belong to this vehicle that Mr. Burt was driving?
No, the tag belonged to a blue 2007 Hyundai Santa Fe registered to Beverly Klima, his girlfriend.
Was Mr. Burt the driver of this vehicle during this accident?
Yes, ma'am.
Was anyone else in the vehicle with him?
No, ma'am.
The THC oil that you indicated that was located, how were you able to determine that that was THC oil?
The officers, there were other law enforcement officers present who aided in the search because there were many objects in the vehicle. They had discovered it and recognized it as THC oil.
After you got Mr. Burt in your vehicle, was he transported to the Clayton County Jail?
He was taken to the hospital because he was involved in a vehicle accident.
Did all of this take place in Clayton County?
It did.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
All right, redirect. I'm sorry, cross.
All right, thank you. Hi, Officer Adams.
Hello, sir.
Let's go back through a lot of your testimony here. I just want to make sure that the court has an understanding of what it is that you've said this entire time, okay? Officer Adams, you attended the Atlanta Police Department Academy, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
While you were at the Atlanta Police Academy, did you become post-certified?
I was mandated. I believe it's like, I'm sort of certified, but I can't be sworn into an agency.
Officer Adams, I know what mandate training is. The question is, did you receive a certificate from the Georgia Peace Officers and Standards Training Council?
I did not.
Okay, thank you. And since you brought up this term of mandate, let's go through and talk about mandate. Mandate requires that you shoot a 270 on the range, correct?
240.
240. Requirements went down. Mandate requires that you pass a general test on what the laws are that we have in this state, correct?
Correct.
Not exhaustive. It's not an exhaustive test, is it?
It's fine. I went to law school. It wasn't that hard.
Very good. All right. So you went to law school. In mandate training, did you get any exhaustive study on DUI?
I did not get an exhaustive study in DUI.
Okay,
but
wonderful.
I need to define what that means by exhaustive study.
Well, exhaustive is anything more than 1 day of study.
We had 2 days.
You had 2 days. In your 2 days of study, did you receive a certificate from that?
Was one given to me in my hand? Did I have access to one? I did not receive one in my hand, but I don't know if I had access to one.
So none was given to you in your hand, is that correct?
Correct. And I don't know if I had access to one, if one was online or anything. It wasn't.
You did not access one, is that correct?
Say it again.
And you did not access one, is that correct?
I did not access one. If one was available, I would not have known to access it.
Okay. So no trainer told you that you could access one, is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Now, when you came to work for the Clayton County Police Department, did you also go through training?
No, I went through field training.
You went through field training only. All right. And there you became a certified police officer, is that correct?
Correct, sir.
All right. So let's start with accident investigations. Have you taken courses on accident investigations?
Yes, sir.
Subsequent to your field training and post-training, your an APD training?
Subsequent to both of those, no, sir.
Okay. Have you taken any training on accident reconstruction?
No, sir.
So in looking at your post record, I would not see something that says that you are certified as an accident reconstructionist. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. When I look at your post training, I also would not see something that says that you're DUI certified, correct?
That depends. According to APD, I am DUI certified, but according to Clayton County, I'm not.
Ah, all right. So tell the court what reliability you would give to a walk and turn test in your DUI.
I wouldn't know how to answer that question. I have never even considered that.
So during the mandatory training on DUI for those who become DUI certified, where it says that the walk and turn has a 79% reliability, you don't know anything about that, do you?
I wouldn't even have memorized that fact to know that that fact even existed.
And then what about the horizontal gaze nystagmus test? What's the reliability of that?
Don't know, sir.
Okay. Have you administered a horizontal gaze nystagmus test to this man who you are here testifying about today?
No.
Okay. Did you administer a walk and turn test to this man who you have here testifying about today?
No.
Okay. In the walk and turn test, Officer Adams, how many steps would you command this man under ordinary circumstances to take in one direction?
None.
Wonderful. And you would start evaluating him at what point?
Before he started, during the explanation.
Very good. So in this case, however, you didn't get an opportunity to do that. Is that correct?
We did not field sobriety test him.
At all?
At all.
All right. Now, you have a portable breath tester, right?
Say that again.
You have a portable breath tester?
I do not.
Did you have one on the day that you encountered this man?
I did not.
Okay. Now, there was an accident involving two vehicles. Is that correct?
Correct.
And one of the vehicles for which there was an accident was later, you found the defendant in that vehicle, or at least other law enforcement did. Is that correct?
Correct.
Wonderful. Now, in the flock system, because you've told us about the flock system, it was able to tell you who the driver of that car was?
I don't know how to use flock or fusus, and I did not use flock or fusus on that day.
Okay. Did anybody use flock or fusus to tell them who the driver was in that car on that day?
Yes, Sergeant Lamb
Mm-hmm.
and Officer Mosby.
All right, so let's start with Sergeant Lamb. Did Sergeant Lamb tell you that Flock identified this man as the driver of that car on that day?
He did not tell me. If he did, I don't remember.
Okay. How about
I'm sorry.
You've answered them. Thank you, sir. How about Officer Mosley? Did he tell you that Flock identified this man as being in that car on that day?
No.
Okay. All right. How about fuses? Did Officer Lamb or Sergeant Lamb tell you about fuses having identified the man in that car on that day?
I don't know how these flock of fuses works. I'm repeating what they told me, sir. No.
All right. But so you're saying that, and I want to make sure because I think you're under oath. Somebody, either Lamb or Mosley, told you that Flock or Fusus identified the defendant as the driver of the automobile at the time of the collision. Is that correct?
No.
Okay. All right. Now, at a later time, you find or you're told that the defendant is in possession of the automobile. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And at a later time, you are told that this car has a tag on it that does not belong to the car. Is that correct?
Yes.
Wonderful. And at a later time, when you're told that, do you issue a citation or seek a warrant out for the arrest of him for the tag not being the correct tag on the vehicle?
That was a charge that was added on after we ran the tag.
Did you add that charge?
Yes,
All right. Now, you've told Madam Prosecutor and the court that the car did not belong to the individual who you were charging. Is that correct?
correct.
Did you question this individual at the time about the tag on the car?
Yes.
And what did he tell you?
He said it belonged to his girlfriend.
So he did not tell you that anything about how the tag actually got on the car. Is that correct?
Correct.
He just said that the car belonged to his girlfriend. Is that right?
Correct.
All right. Now, did you seek a warrant for the charge of no insurance against this individual?
I added that charge, yes.
You added that charge. And you added this charge based upon what, officer?
When we ran the vehicle NCIC, it came back with no valid insurance.
When you ran the vehicle's vehicle identification number?
Yes. It wasn't registered, and therefore it had no insurance also.
So the vehicle wasn't registered and it didn't have any insurance. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, when you say you checked NCIC, you're checking the federal system. You're not checking GCIC, the Georgia system. Is that correct? Or ACIC, correct?
I'm running it on our MCT, but I believe it's NCIC.
Okay, gotcha. All right. So would your MCT tell you if the car was registered in, let's say, Illinois?
Yes.
All right. Would it tell you if it's registered in Florida?
Yes.
All right. And officer, remember you're under oath. Would it tell you if it's registered in Ohio?
Yes.
Okay. Officer, you charged this individual with no insurance. Did you get a chance to ask him whether he had insurance?
I don't remember.
You don't remember whether you asked him, or you don't remember what his answer was? Which
I
team?
don't remember if I asked him. I don't remember what his answer was also.
Okay, I got it. All right. When you searched the automobile, you and the rest of law enforcement, did you find evidence of any kind of insurance?
No.
The automobile?
No, sir.
All right. I want to clarify one thing before we move to our next statement. So you not only didn't find the vehicle registered, by saying that, you're saying you didn't find it ever being canceled or anything else. It's just like a mysterious vehicle that came out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Officer, you said that a witness said that the car had ran a red light. Is that correct?
Yes.
You weren't able to verify that through any kind of camera on apparatus on the scene. Is that correct?
I was not. Maybe others were able to view the camera footage.
But you weren't.
No, sir.
All right. Was there a camera located at the scene of this accident?
There may be one.
Okay. Now, the tag that you found, you said it was expired. Is that correct? I'm sorry?
Hold on a second. I'm trying to remember. The tag belonged to Beverly Klima, but it goes to a different vehicle.
I got that. But was it expired?
I don't remember.
All right. Okay. All right. Give me just a moment, please, officer.
Yes, sir.
Hospital. Stop. DUI. Hit a red light. Go in.
All right. So you described this young man as having marijuana. Is that correct?
Yes.
Less than 5 grams. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. And this marijuana, did you submit it to any field testing?
Was it field tested? It was not field tested.
Okay. Was it tested at a lab somewhere?
It was submitted to be tested with a DOFAS form.
Mhm. And did you get a result back yet?
If there is a result, I haven't checked.
Okay. Officer, tell the judge, if you would, the difference between hemp and marijuana.
What in marijuana?
Hemp.
Isn't hemp a leaf?
Okay. So you don't know the difference between those two?
I'm not familiar with hemp.
Okay. All right, officer, let me ask other questions of you, please. How much what you call low THC oil did you find in the possession of this defendant or in the car that he occupied?
It was 2 vapes that contained THC oil. They didn't have a measurement.
Okay. What was the percentage of vegetable matter in those vapes?
I would know. They were also submitted for testing.
No license.
All right. Let me switch then and talk about this license for just a minute. Madam Prosecutor gave you a question. She said, and he didn't have a valid license. Do you remember that question?
Yes,
And you agreed that he did not have a valid license. Is that right?
correct.
Did he have any license at all?
He presented us with a non-driver's license.
What is a non-driver's license?
It means that he doesn't have the privilege of driving.
Does it? So it says non-driver's license on the front of this instrument?
It said non-driver's license.
What state issued that?
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. Did you put that into evidence as well?
I did not.
What did you do with it?
It followed him throughout the prison system as his ID.
All right. So when you check the system, however, meaning your MTC, I believe you called it, system, did you find that he had a license anywhere?
No,
Did you find that his license had been suspended anywhere, his privilege to drive on Georgia's roads?
no.
Okay. So no record of any license, no record of a suspension of any privilege to drive. Is that correct?
I didn't see any.
All right.
Expired.
Let me ask you, officer, if he had a license in the state of Florida or California, would you see that in your system?
You should, but I was using the ID number from his Oklahoma ID.
So you did not run his name?
If it said previous ID from another state, which we would normally do, I didn't check the other state. That was the ID he presented.
I understand. I understand. All right. Officer, I have no further questions at this time, and I thank you.
Thank you, sir.
No additional questions, Your Honor. State rest.
No redirect. Okay, all righty. So closing arguments, Attorney Freeman.
State waives opening.
You mean closing? Okay.
She waives her first strike at close. She wants to go last. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Let me get that. All right. Go ahead and go ahead.
Judge, I kind of want to take these in the order that you see the warrant, but I don't know that order. Are you comfortable with me just choosing my own order?
Just tell me which one you're talking about first, and then I'll go to it.
Understood, Judge. Let me start with DUI alcohol less safe.
All right.
We heard that the defendant had a pungent odor of marijuana. What you did not hear, Judge, is that he had a strong odor of an alcoholic beverage coming from his breath. I asked questions about the horizontal gaze nystagmus test, and we were told that it was not administered. Also, that the officer did not know that the HGN had an 83% reliability. I asked about the walk and turn, Judge, and the officer said he did not administer a walk and turn, and he didn't know about the 79% reliability related to the walk and turn. I asked about the one leg stand, and his answer was, I didn't give administer any field sobriety test, Judge. So I didn't question him about the 72% reliability of that test. I did ask, however, about the portable breath tester. And the officer says he didn't have a portable breath tester. Judge, the reason why I asked all of those questions is because those are all of the items that are located under OCGA 40-5-67.1 that are the precursor for a person getting cited with DUI alcohol. Those are they. The officer did not testify as to reading any implied consent warnings following the arrest. And so this charge goes nowhere whatsoever. Under OCGA 40-6-391A1, a person under the influence of alcohol who drives in a fashion that is less safe, that is that charge. Judge, here's the problem. We don't even know if this defendant was driving at the time of the accident, because this officer doesn't know it. He knew the car that the defendant was found in later on had been involved in an accident, but he didn't know anything about whether the defendant had been driving the car at the time of the accident. Since the officer mentioned marijuana, Judge, we didn't have a gas chromatograph or blood test taken or a urine sample taken to permit the court to reach down to OCGA 40-6-391A6, or under the influence of drugs to the extent it makes him a less safe driver under OCGA 40-6-391A2, or glues or aerosols under 40-6-391A3, or any combination of substance found in OCGA 40-6-391A4. We absolutely don't have a test as to the alcohol content, so the court can't find probable cause or any kind of cause for an A5 having an impermissible blood alcohol level within 3 hours of the time of driving. So I'd ask the court to dismiss that charge. Judge, the next charge I go to is the leaving the scene of an accident where there are injuries or damage thereto, 40-6-270. That is the hit and run charge. This young man would have had to have been the driver of the automobile at the time it was involved in a collision where there was either injuries or damage to either automobile. We have heard nothing from the officer about injuries sustained in an accident. We did hear that there was damage to the automobile that needed to be towed from the intersection and the vehicle later on that the defendant was found in, but nothing about the defendant being the driver of the car. What we in fact heard is that the car belongs to somebody else. That's what we heard. That later on they find him in the car, and his explanation for being in the car is his girlfriend. But the girlfriend's not charged. Judge, the officer states at one point in time that he had the defendant goes to the hospital. I didn't know which way to attribute that. If he had been in an accident, then being unsteady on his feet would have been a natural outcome. That accident, however, or any other, if he had been impaired, then that could have been a reason why he was unsteady on the feet. But whatever the reason is, the officer sent this individual to the hospital. And so I would ask at this point in time, the officer says that the car was in an accident, but not the person. And nobody else has said the person was in an accident either. The car pulled into the parking lot and then left the parking lot, the car belonging to, according to the officer, the defendant's girlfriend. Judge, the next charge I go to is the red light violation. And I'm not going to argue that at all. There's a witness that says the car went through the red light, and there's nothing else beyond that point. There's no witness that talks about if the light had just turned red, or if they're like Crail that calls them red lights and forgets to call them traffic lights or amber lights, which is what Georgia calls them. So we don't have enough to even work with on that. So I would submit on that misdemeanor that the court can find any way it wants to find. Judge, 40-6-10 is the statute in this state that deals with insurance. It has gone through a lot of modifications, but its present sense is that a person knowingly operates an automobile that he or she knows doesn't have insurance at the time of its operation. For argument's sake, if the defendant were driving the automobile later on or during the accident, the car's not his, according to the only person that has talked about it, which is the defendant. And so the interesting thing is that the Georgia statute 40-6-10 commands the officer to issue a ticket for no proof of insurance. But this officer elected to not do that. He didn't care what the statute required. He cited him with 40-6-10B. Whether he put the B on there or not is immaterial. English versus State and Thompson v. State, which I can give court citations on, answer that no insurance means 40-6-10B. And there's nothing here about what this person's knowledge is. 40-6-10C, Judge, is operating in or permitting a person to operate an automobile that belongs to somebody else that's not insured. And so we have nothing here to support that charge. At best, the court might be able to amend this to 40-6-10A, no proof of insurance. It might be able to do that. I will say why in a few minutes. I don't believe that the court has enough to work with on that.
No license.
The next charge, Judge, is no license.
I'm sorry. He did charge him with 4610A.
Okay, so we had testimony on 4610B, no insurance, not no proof of insurance.
Okay. All right.
So now we go to, and that's the only thing he was questioned about. So Judge, now let's move on, if we would please, to no license. The officer was evasive on this part, but I'm gonna offer you everything that I can on the law. 40-5-20 is the no license, the driver's license required statute in the state of Georgia. It has a lot of moving parts on it, but the sum total says that a person has to have a license to operate an automobile in this state. This state also recognizes the licenses of other states as well. The officer was a tad bit evasive, but this state doesn't maintain the database of Florida or California. None of those states, Illinois, Ohio, that don't participate in the Interstate Driver Compact. And so he wouldn't be able to see. But then again, he didn't check. He didn't check at all. What he said is, I found this card or was given this card by the defendant, and he didn't check to find out if he had a license even in this state. He checked the card, and the card says non-operator or non-driver. And so I'd ask the court to dismiss that charge.
Expired.
I would submit to you that OCGA 40-5-29 would have been a better statute. No license on person. That one might have worked a little bit better. At least from the evidence that's been offered here, we can get there. Judge, we have expired plate. The officer testified he didn't know if the plates were expired. OCGA 40-2-8. And then the decal 40-2-8.1 are the applicable ones here. But he did not know whether the plates were expired or not. He knew they belonged to somebody else, but he didn't know that they were expired. That was his testimony. He charges the defendant with OCGA 40-2-6 or 7. 7. Affixing a tag for the purposes of concealing the identity of the vehicle. Well, Judge, that statute requires that a person, again knowingly, affixes a tag to an automobile for the purposes of concealing its identity. The officer did not question the defendant about what he did with respect to the tag. He found a tag that was on a car that didn't belong to the car. The car belonged to somebody else, but rather than charging the somebody else with the tag that's on there, he charged the person who was found later on driving the car. Not during the time of the accident, but later on. And no questions whatsoever about how that tag got on that car.
Also loading.
Judge, the next charge I'm looking at is possession of low THC oil. There's a couple of things that's required for this to work, Judge. First, we've got to make sure we got THC oil. But for argument's sake, Georgia statutes permit the possession of 20 grams, liters. One moment, please, Judge. Let me look at this again. 20 fluid ounces or less of THC oil. Georgia permits that. I would submit to you, you don't know how many ounces. If it was THC, you don't know how many ounces. If somebody else recognized it as THC, you don't know how many ounces. There's been no testimony as to the quantity. The testimony was to how many vape pens the defendant possessed, but not as to the content of those vape pens, whether it had any THC oil in it at all. We come next to possession of marijuana
Councilman J.
This one's under 1613 2B, possession of marijuana less than an ounce. And here, Judge, I kind of cheated a little bit because I envision that I'm a little bit older than this officer, and I asked a loaded question. And the loaded question was, tell the judge what the difference is between hemp and marijuana. He asked me a question about wasn't hemp a leafy substance. I'll ask the court to take judicial notice of that, Judge. He doesn't know what marijuana is, cannabis sativa is, the requirements of how much vegetable matter and THC must be present in order for it to not be just considered cannabis sativa and actually marijuana. He says he submitted it to the GBI testing or some level of later on lab testing, but I have an article here in my computer where GBI said they weren't going to test anything that small, so we ain't going to ever get no result back on that. And it wasn't field tested in the streets by this officer. So here's where I asked the court to do for me with respect to all of these charges, and I'm going to work in the inverse. Dismiss the possession of marijuana less than an ounce. Dismiss the low possession of low THC oil, because even if it is, you don't know anything about the quantity, and Georgia says specifically that you can have it if it's 20 ounces or less. Dismiss the concealing the identity of the vehicle, because you don't know who fixed the tag, and there was no testimony that the defendant fixed anything to any vehicle whatsoever. In fact, the vehicle that the tag was found on belongs to somebody else. Dismiss the expired plate because the officer testified he didn't know if the plate is actually expired. Dismiss the no license and substitute in its place a no license on person under 40-5-29. Dismiss the no proof of insurance warrant that you've got, because you got no testimony about that whatsoever. You got testimony about no insurance, and I would submit to you that the court would not be able to find cause for that, because no one asked him what he knew about whether his girlfriend's car had insurance or not. Judge, there are a lot of ways now that in our new modified statute, and I started by saying that statute's gone through a lot of changes. Now, a person can present it on their phone. They can have SR22 insurance with the insurance on them, even though it's not on the vehicle, and it be good enough. But there weren't any questions by this officer, Judge, about that. There weren't any asks of him, and there were no answers given by him concerning that at all. Red light violation, Judge, I submit to the court it can do whatever it wants to with that. The hit and run, there's no testimony that this defendant was driving an automobile at the time. Whether you use the flock or the fuses system, whether it's sergeant this person or officer that person, because nobody's testified that he was driving the car at the time. We only know that the car belongs to somebody else. DUI alcohol less safe, Judge, there was no portable breath test. That was the easiest way to get to that answer about the presence of alcohol in a defendant's system. All we needed was just the presence of alcohol and any less safe behavior. But unfortunately, there was no presence. We only got a statement about the pungent odor of marijuana about the defendant's person at the time that he was arrested. That is my request to you. Thank you.
All righty. And so, one moment before you get started, Attorney Freeman.
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. We're asking that all the charges are bound over to Superior Court. Regarding the DUI charge, we heard the officer testified that based on his training and experience, having taken DUI class with the Atlanta Police Department, he testified that he saw Mr. Burt with the bloodshot eyes, the glassy eyes, the smell of marijuana. He could not walk in a straight line, and his speech was slurred. I asked him specifically if those were characteristics that regarding the DUI, and he said yes. So we're asking that you bind that charge over to Superior Court. During my questioning of Officer Adams, he testified about the witness. I was able to give a description regarding what happened in the accident. Witness specifically said that that Mr. Burt's vehicle was the one who ran the light. And I know Attorney Lewis, it is almost like a play on words. So he's saying that no one said that Mr. Burt was the one driving. They said the car. I asked the officer if anyone else was in the car with Mr. Burt. He said no. The only person in that vehicle was Mr. Burt. So, Judge, we're asking that you bind that charge to hit and run over to Superior Court. The red light violation, yes, it was testified that Mr. Burt was the one who ran the light. We have the no proof of insurance. Again, based on the testimony of Officer Adams, that Mr. Burt was not able to produce the insurance, as well as a valid license. We're asking that those charges are bound over to Superior Court. The failure to register a vehicle, the officer testified about the license plate that was on the car was not the license plate that belonged to the car based on the VIN number. There was not valid registration on that vehicle. And so we're asking that charge be bound over. As well as the one about affixing of a plate to conceal or misrepresent the vehicle. The possession of THC oil, there was testimony by Officer Adams that there were 2 vape pens. He did say that had the THC oil. Regarding the possession of marijuana, Judge, he did testify that based on his training and experience, that the characteristics of marijuana, that's what fit the substance that he saw. And he also testified to, I believe it was 2 other officers who were there that indicated what the substance was. So based on the testimony of Officer Adams, Judge, we are asking that all of these charges are bound over to Superior Court.
Judge, I have one objection to make as to the improper argument.
Uh-huh.
There was no testimony about the officer that he had gone through a DUI class. The testimony is that he went through mandate. That is the first thing. And I think that's good enough. I don't need to beat that horse.
All right. All right. So based upon the evidence presented, I am actually going to bind over each and every one of these charges except for the THC oil. I'm going to dismiss that one. And so then that would mean that this will go to state court as opposed to being transferred to Superior Court, because that was the only felony.
That's correct, Judge.
All right. So everything else is bound over to state court except for the vape pens. That's the order of the court.
Thank you,
Very good.
Judge. Officer Adams, you're excused.